Born to Prince George and Marina, Duchess of Kent, Prince Edward, Duke of Kent, is the first cousin of the late Queen Elizabeth II. While it may fly under the radar, Edward has long been a dedicated working royal and is involved with over 140 charities and organizations. According to the royal family's website, he has undertaken over 60 overseas trips to promote British trade and exports, including to Europe, Japan, Australia and the Middle East. It was his mother who introduced Edward to a life of service when she had him accompany her on an extensive tour of the Far East. The trip came around Edward's 17th birthday and 10 years after the Kents were struck by heartbreaking tragedy. In 1942, when Edward was just 7 years old, his father died in a military air accident in Scotland. Circumstances surrounding the incident remain mysterious to this day and the Kents have never spoken publicly about the crash. Celia Lee, author of HRH The Duke of Kent, A Life of Service, claimed Marina lived in genteel poverty following the death of her husband. Writing for the Sunday Express in 2013, Lee said, Prince Edward enjoyed an idyllic childhood with his younger sister, Princess Alexandra, and his adoring parents until their lives were shattered when their father was killed in an airplane crash in 1942, when their newborn brother Prince Michael was only 6 weeks old. The widowed Princess Marina was left in genteel poverty but continued with her work as Commandant of the Women's Royal Naval Service, or RANS, until her death in 1968. Marina was one of the most glamorous and best-loved members of the royal family. Previously a princess of Greece and Denmark, she became the Duchess of Kent when she married Prince George in 1934. She was widowed in 1942 when George was killed in active service. The Duchess, according to royal biographer Hugo Vickers, was the only war widow in Britain whose estate was forced to pay death duties. It was the high rates of wartime taxation, unknown to the aristocracy of pre-war Britain, that would prove to be her undoing. Papers in the National Archives in Kew show that Buckingham Palace preferred to keep the widowed Duchess of Kent in poverty rather than back Prime Minister Winston Churchill's plan to support her from public funds, a move King George VI's advisors feared would expose how little tax the royal family paid on their huge state subsidies. Her poverty was considered less important than the damage that the rest of the firm might suffer at a time when Britons were paying record rates of income tax. Lord Herbert, the Duchess's financial advisor, wrote a letter to the Prime Minister 3 months after the Duke's death, detailing her difficulties. When Prince George died, the £25,000 annual subsidy paid by the state to the Duke, worth over £900,000 a year at today's prices, ended, and after paying death duties and all her necessary bills, the Duchess would have a disposable income of less than £1,000, £36,000, a year, hardly enough to maintain her country home in Buckinghamshire. Lord Herbert wrote, "It will be quite impossible for her to have a London residence, which she ought to have in order that she may be able to see the many people which a member of the royal family has to see, and to entertain those who entertain her. She is a very economical person, and has no expensive tastes or habits, but she would feel deeply hurt if she knew that the minute the Duke was dead Parliament took no more eye